Hello everyone, welcome to Gen Biovids. Today we're going to begin with the series GCSE Biology. The first module in this series is cell structure, and the first topic that we're going to be looking at is eukaryotes and prokaryotes. So this is the structure of the content that we're going to cover. So first we're going to look at the difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. We're then going to look at two examples of a eukaryotic cell, animal and plant cells, and their differences. We're then going to look at some exam questions about animal and plant cells. We're then going to look at an example of a prokaryotic cell, which is bacteria, and an exam question on this topic. Okay, so now we can begin. So, firstly, all living organisms, so you, me, bacteria, dogs, cats, we're all made up of cells. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms, whereas eukaryotes are multicellular organisms. So if you think of us, we are eukaryotes because we have skin cells, heart cells, muscle cells, and all these cells carry a different function. So it's often said that prokaryotes are very simple organisms, like bacteria, and eukaryotes are a lot more complex, like us. Now let's look at an example of two eukaryotic cells. So, animal cells and plant cells. A common exam question refers to the differences between animal and plant cells. So they may ask you to list two differences, or they may ask you to list two similarities, but we're going to go through this now. So, the first similarity is they both have a cell membrane. The cell membrane is what holds the cell together, and it controls the entry and the exit of some substances in and out the cell. The nucleus is the site where all the genetic material is contained, so where the DNA is contained. The cytoplasm is the gel-like substance inside the cell, which contains many enzymes. These enzymes are responsible for the chemical reactions that occur inside the cell. Next up is the ribosome, and this is a site where protein synthesis occurs, so where the proteins are made. And finally, we have the mitochondria. Now the mitochondria produces energy by aerobic respiration. So it gives the cell energy to perform all the chemical reactions needed for cell survival. So we've talked about the similarities. Now, the plant cell contains a few extra things which make it different from the animal cell. The first is the cell wall. The cell wall is made of this strong material called cellulose, and this gives it a rigid structure. So if you imagine an animal cell, because it just has a cell membrane, under a microscope it will look like jelly. So this is very flexible, will move around, whereas the plant cell will remain the same structure when you look at it under a microscope because of this rigid cell wall. So the next additional feature that the plant cell has is the chloroplast. The chloroplasts are where photosynthesis occurs, and they contain a green substance called chlorophyll, which absorbs the light needed for photosynthesis to occur. And this is what actually gives vegetation a green colour. So next time someone asks you, oh, why is the grass green? You can be smart and say, well, it's because plant cells contain chlorophyll, which is needed for photosynthesis. And you may be wondering why there's this big hole in the middle here, and that's because this final feature that a plant cell has is the vacuole, which is the storage compartment for the cell and contains many sugars and salts. Okay, so let's now look at an exam question. This is an example of a simple 1-mark question, and it reads, plants are specialised to use photosynthesis. What cellular component do plants use for this function? So you should be able to answer this question now, and obviously it is the chloroplast. So let's look at another. So this is an example of a 6-mark question, and it asks you to draw and label an animal cell and its major structures. So at this point you can pause the video and try and do that yourself. Now this question is a nice and easy 6 marks, and you'll be looking to produce something that looks like this. So you'll have a title of the animal cell and the features that we've just discussed. Now your artistry isn't being assessed here, it's your scientific content and that you understand the major structures of an animal cell. So a common error is people spend way too much time on drawing the animal cell so it looks really nice. Okay? But as I'm going to show you now, this lovely drawing here is going to be worth exactly the same marks as a drawing I'm going to do in under a minute. Okay, so first you need to give it a title. So I'm not going to write the full thing here, but it will be animal cell. And then you can draw the cell. So just draw something that somewhat resembles an animal cell. Add a few dots for the ribosomes. Add the nucleus in the middle and the mitochondria. Like I say, it doesn't matter that this looks pretty terrible, because they're assessing your scientific content, not your ability to draw. Okay, so once you've got something very simple like that, then you can then add your labels. So here we're going to have the cell membrane. So we'll have just an arrow going into the middle here for the cytoplasm. We'll put an arrow here for the mitochondria and one for the nucleus. So is there anything I'm forgetting? Oh yeah, another one for the ribosomes. Okay, so then you'll label. So I'm not going to write the full word out because it's really difficult on a computer, but I'll write R for ribosomes, N for nucleus, CM cell membrane, C for cytoplasm, and M for mitochondria. Obviously you'll write the full word in your exam, but this is an example. This will give you 6 marks, and spending 20 minutes doing the perfect animal cell will also give you 6 marks. So it's better to do it quick and easy and give you time to answer more difficult questions. Okay, let's move on. So let's look at an example of a prokaryotic cell. Or a bacterium. So bacterium is a single cell. So bacteria is more than one bacterium. So this is a typical bacterium shape, a rod-like shape. And the bacterium contains things that we've already discussed. So it has a cell membrane, has cytoplasm, a cell wall, and it also has some ribosomes. There are also some differences. So the first, it doesn't have a true nucleus. So its genetic material just floats around in the cytoplasm. And also the DNA is circular. And in addition to the genomic DNA, bacteria can have additional DNA in the form of plasmids. So these are small circular rings of DNA. And plasmids contain non-essential information for bacterial survival. So an example is antibiotic resistance. So the bacteria can survive under normal conditions without antibiotic resistance, so it could survive without a plasmid encoding antibiotic resistance. So this is known as genetic information, which is non-essential. So now let's look at a question. So this question asks for you to name the structures labelled A, B, C and D on the diagram. Okay, this should be fairly straightforward. So we have the cell membrane, and a good way for you to distinguish this from the cell wall is the cell membrane is always towards the inside of the cell, whereas the cell wall is always on the outside of the cell. And this is the case for both bacteria and plant cells. Okay, so cytoplasm, just anywhere in this inner region here, and obviously you have the DNA, which contains the genetic information, and note that there's no nucleus around this DNA here. So that concludes the video for today. The next topic is the magnification formula. So we'll look at how to calculate the magnification, or the actual size of the microorganism, or the image size, and we will calculate this using a formula. So if you found this video helpful, please like it and please subscribe, and stay with Gen Biovids for all the topics that you need to be covered for your GCSE biology success.